The wind had a voice of its own in Redstone Valley, soft, ancient, and never fully still. It carried stories from before fences were hammered into the earth, before men thought they could own the land beneath their boots. Among the scattered oaks and the dry scent of sagebrush stood a small ranch house, weathered by sun and silence. Its owner, Ethan Cole, was a man people in town called the Shy Rancher, not because he lacked strength or will. Those who'd seen him at work knew his quiet endurance, but because words seemed to sit too heavy on his tongue. He lived alone, spoke to his horses more than humans, and if ever he went to the trading post, he stayed only as long as it took to get what he needed. He wasn't unkind, just far away, like part of him was always somewhere else, listening to something no one else could hear. That changed on the evening. The twins came riding through the dust. They appeared out of the horizon like two mirror images carved from light and shadow, both with long black hair tied in leather, both dressed in deep red ponchos that caught the dying sun. Their eyes were a deep brown that shimmered with amber edges, sharp as flint and ancient as the hills themselves. They were known in whispers across Redstone. The Apache twins from Spirit Mesa. Some said they were descendants of medicine women. Some said they spoke to the wind. Others just said it wasn't good luck to cross their path unless you were pure of heart. Ethan didn't believe in luck, but when they stopped in front of his corral and dismounted, he felt the air shift, as though something in the world had just noticed him for the first time. Evening, one of them said, her tone laced with curiosity. The other didn't speak, but her eyes followed him, patient and knowing. Ethan set down the bucket he was carrying, brushed the dust off his palms, and nodded. Evening, he managed. We're looking for shelter till dawn, the first twin said. The trails aren't safe tonight. Ethan hesitated, scanning the horizon. The sun was bleeding out behind the hills. He felt the prickle of unease, that instinct of a man who's lived too long with ghosts of his own. But their horses were tired, and their faces held the kind of calm that came from power, not helplessness. He nodded again. You can stable your horses out back. There's food inside if you don't mind it plain. The silent twin smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips, and Ethan looked away too quickly. Something in her gaze felt like it could peel back his thoughts. They followed him toward the ranch house, moving in perfect rhythm, their boots barely stirring dust. Inside, the air carried the smell of coffee and cedarwood. Ethan lit a lantern, its glow casting soft gold across the wooden walls. The twins sat across from him, their ponchos draped neatly, eyes scanning the room as if memorizing it. We're grateful, said the one who spoke. I'm Tala. My sister is Sani. Ethan nodded again, still avoiding their gaze. Name's Ethan. Ethan Cole, Sani said, her voice low and melodic like the hum of a bowstring before release. The man who doesn't talk much. He looked up at that, startled. You know me? Tala smirked. Everyone in Redstone knows the rancher who listens to the wind more than people. He tried to smile, but it faltered. Guess I don't give them much else to talk about. Sometimes silence speaks louder, Sani murmured. Her eyes held his, steady, searching, almost too deep to stand. They ate quietly, the sound of crickets filling the pauses. When the plates were cleared, Tala reached into her satchel and placed a small object on the table, a smooth black stone etched with spirals. Ethan stared. That's some kind of charm. It's called a wind mark, she said. It protects travelers from what moves unseen. He frowned. You mean coyotes? Coyotes walk on legs. We speak of those who walk on whispers. Sani's tone carried no jest, and though Ethan wanted to dismiss it, he felt that same uneasy tug deep in his gut, the one that told him something old was stirring in the hills again. Later, as they settled into the small guest room, Ethan sat outside beneath the stars, his hat tilted low, the air sharp with desert chill. The wind moved through the trees, whispering in half words, almost like laughter. He looked back at the house and saw, through the window, the faint silhouettes of the twins moving in unison. One brushing her hair, the other watching her reflection. For a heartbeat, it was impossible to tell which was which. The horses neighed suddenly, restless. Ethan rose, went to the corral, and there, under the pale wash of moonlight, he saw something strange. The air shimmered near the fence post, as though heat were rising off sand, but the night was cold. Then came a soft humming, like a song he'd never heard but somehow remembered. He turned and found Sani standing behind him, barefoot, her eyes glinting silver in the moonlight. You hear them too, don't you? She asked. Ethan stiffened. Hear who? the ones beneath the earth. The old one, the hills, have been waiting for someone who listens. He swallowed hard. Ma'am, I don't. You do, she interrupted, stepping closer. You've been hearing them since you were a child, haven't you? The voices when the wind changes direction. He backed up slightly, unsure whether to deny it or ask how she knew. Don't be afraid, Sani said softly. They don't speak to just anyone. Her words sent a chill through him. Then, as quickly as she'd appeared, she turned and walked back toward the house, her bare feet silent in the dust. Ethan stayed there long after she was gone, the night growing colder, the air alive with invisible murmurs. When he finally returned to the porch, Tala was waiting there, leaning against the post with that same half-smile. Careful, rancher, she said. The desert likes to steal the quiet ones first. He stared at her, confused, but before he could respond, she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her. The wind rose again, fierce and wild, and for a fleeting moment Ethan thought. He heard laughter, two voices, overlapping, ancient and knowing, and somewhere deep in the earth below his ranch, something began to move. Morning came slow to Redstone Valley, painting the ranch in faded gold. The light stretched across the land like a quiet promise, but Ethan Cole didn't feel peace. He'd barely slept. The wind had whispered all night. Not words exactly, but sounds that made him think of movement. Beneath the soil, of roots, of something ancient breathing in rhythm with the earth itself. When he stepped outside, the twins were already awake. Tala was tending to the horses, her hands moving with calm precision. Sani sat on the fence, humming a tune that didn't belong to any language he knew. It rose and fell like the song of the wind itself, low and haunting. Ethan poured coffee into a tin cup and offered it to her. She smiled, taking it carefully, her fingers brushing his, light as dust. You didn't sleep, she said, her voice neither question nor accusation. He shook his head. You could say the hills were talking. Tala looked up at that. Then they've chosen you. Ethan frowned. Chosen me for what? To listen. The simplicity of her answer made it heavier somehow. Sani hopped off the fence and turned toward the ridge. There's a cave 2 miles north, she said. It's where the old ones used to call the wind. If they spoke to you, it's because something's stirring again. I'm not one for ghost stories, Ethan muttered. Tala smirked. No one ever is until they see one. He wanted to argue, but their calm certainty silenced him. Something in him, the same instinct that had made him invite them in, told him this wasn't superstition. This was the same voice that had whispered to him since childhood, the one that had made him afraid of quiet places because they were never truly quiet. By noon they were riding north. The sun glared off the sand, and the valley stretched endless and silent except for the rhythmic clop of hooves. The trail twisted upward between red cliffs until they reached a ledge overlooking the whole valley. Sani dismounted first, scanning the horizon. Tala followed, running her fingers along the rock face until she found a hollow barely large enough for a man to crawl through. Here, she said. This is where it begins. Ethan tied his horse and crouched beside her. The air that seeped from the hole was cool, smelling of stone and something faintly metallic, like rain that hadn't fallen yet. You sure about this? He asked. Sani's smile was faint. Nothing sure about faith, Ethan Cole. You just walk into the dark and see if it swallows you. They entered one by one, lantern light flickering against the rock walls. The tunnel curved downward, narrow at first, then opened into a chamber that glowed faintly blue. Ethan froze. The light wasn't from the lanterns. It pulsed from the walls themselves, veins of crystal running through the stone. In the center of the chamber lay a shallow pool, still as glass. Tala knelt beside it. This is the heart of echoes, she whispered. Our grandmother brought us here once. She said it remembers every sound, every word ever spoken by the wind. Sani dipped her fingers into the water. Ripples spread, and suddenly the air filled with whispers, hundreds of them, layered and overlapping, like forgotten prayers. Ethan stumbled back. What is this? They're asking, Tala said softly. They want to know if you'll listen. To what? To what lies beneath your silence. Ethan felt the weight of the room press in on him. His thoughts grew loud, memories he hadn't touched in years. The day his father vanished in a storm, the voice that had called his name on nights no one else was awake. The reason he never married, never stayed long in town. He had always felt watched, guided, maybe even warned. And now the echoes in this cavern seemed to hum with recognition, as if they knew him. Your father came here once, Sani said quietly. Ethan's eyes widened. What? He heard the same call. The desert doesn't choose randomly. It takes those who can carry its voice. Carry it where? She met his gaze. Into the future. Into those who still remember what the land is asking for. Ethan turned away, running a hand through his hair. I'm just a rancher. I don't know what any of this means. Tala's voice softened. You know more than you think. Haven't you ever wondered why your fences never stay up on the north side? Why your horses look toward the mesa before a storm? This land is alive, Ethan. It remembers who listens. The light in the crystals pulsed brighter. The whispers rose into a low hum. The pool began to tremble. Ethan stepped closer without meaning to, drawn by something ancient and familiar. Then the water stilled, and for an instant he saw his own reflection shift. It wasn't his face staring back, but another, older, sterner, eyes like embers. He gasped and stumbled backward. Sani caught him by the arm. You saw him. Who? The Watcher, the one who guards the wind's memory. He's been waiting. Ethan's heart pounded. Waiting for what? For you to decide whether you'll silence the land or let it speak again. The chamber trembled, dust falling from above. A low rumble echoed through the walls like thunder rolling underground. Tala looked around sharply. We shouldn't stay. Something's waking faster than it should. They scrambled back through the tunnel, emerging into the blinding daylight just as the ground shuddered beneath their feet. A crack split the ridge where they'd stood moments before, running jagged down toward the valley. Ethan turned to look, breathless. The air shimmered. Heat or something else, he couldn't tell, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw shapes moving within it like figures made of smoke. Sani placed a hand on his shoulder. You've opened the door, she said. Now, you have to choose what walks through it. That night, back at the ranch, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the land was watching. The wind no longer sounded random. It carried rhythm, almost like speech. He sat on the porch while the twins moved silently inside, their shadows passing across the curtains. When Tala stepped out beside him, her face glowed faintly in the lantern light. You think I'm losing my mind, he said quietly. She smiled. Maybe you're finding it. He looked at her, really looked, at the strength in her eyes, at the strange calm that came from someone who had walked with mysteries her whole life. Why me? He asked. Because the quiet ones always hear the truth first. Sani appeared in the doorway then, her gaze unreadable. And because truth always costs something, Ethan felt the air grow colder. What kind of cost? Sani stepped into the light. The hills will want a voice, a promise. If you deny them, they'll take what they're owed. He stood, tension rippling through him. And if I don't? Tala looked toward the dark horizon. Then Redstone will remember what it's been trying to forget. A sudden gust tore through the valley, scattering dust across the porch. The lantern flickered out. For a moment, the only light came from the stars, and in that darkness, Ethan swore he saw movement across the fields, faint and shifting. Figures, dozens, maybe hundreds, walking silently toward the ranch. Shadows shaped like men, but older, heavier, made of dust and wind. The twins didn't move. Their eyes gleamed like twin flames. It's begun, Sani whispered. Ethan stepped forward, the weight of every choice pressing on his chest. Then tell me what I have to do. Tala reached for his hand. Listen. And when the wind speaks your name, answer. The ground shuddered again, the voices rising louder now. The air alive with unseen power. Somewhere deep in the valley, a storm was forming, one that wasn't made of rain or thunder, but memory. The rancher who had lived his life in silence stood on the threshold of something vast, and for the first time, he wasn't afraid of the noise. He looked at the twins, their faces fierce and calm, reflections of one another, and nodded. I'm listening, he said. The wind answered,